Hello, everyone. Welcome to another video with Jennie and myself, Laurie. And today we're talking about the summer solstice. We're talking about Cancer season, the sun moving into Cancer, which is happening on June 21st at 10:57 a.m. Eastern Time. Before we get into that topic, let me just first say that we together are AstroPath, and that is Jennie of Hidden Path Astrology. You can find her at hiddenpathastrology.com, and myself of AstroLore. You can find me at astrolore.org. You can find us on social media and do all the things. Like our video, follow us, share us, and make some comments. That would be great. We love to hear from you. Jennie and I both do consultations and teaching, so be sure to look at our websites, check it out, see if there's any other ways that we can support your life with our work. The other thing I want to mention is that I've recently started an Etsy shop where I'm providing these monthly documents, kind of workbook documents. And I've got one up there for each new moon and for each season of the sun changing signs. So right now there is one up there for the Gemini new moon and for this Cancer season. And they're just really interesting ways that you can work with your own chart and follow the cycles and the patterns that are going on. So check those out. There'll be a link below to look at those. And now with all that chatter out of the way, is there anything else that I'm missing, Jennie?
I just encourage people to check out those workbooks because they're really helpful. They really help you kind of look at your own chart and get clear about how you want to use this stuff. So, and also check out my meditations. I do a seasonal meditation for each zodiac sign. So I'll be putting up a new one for Cancer you'll see in the links with this YouTube video. So check out my website for that. That's it. Let's move on, shall we?
All right, yeah, let's move on. What does it mean that we're at the summer solstice?
Oh my goodness. Well, in astronomical terms, it means that the sun is at its northernmost point. So in the northern hemisphere, it's our longest day of the year, more daylight than any other day. Of course, it depends on the local weather. But that is essentially what it means with astronomy. In astrology, it's a cardinal sign that Cancer. So cardinal refers to the same thing as the cardinal points. Cancer is the cardinal sign that sort of heralds in the beginning of summer in the northern hemisphere or the winter if you're in the southern hemisphere. So that's in a nutshell what it means. Cancer season itself, well, let's talk a bit about more that. Yeah, got that all tongue-tied. Would you like to talk about Cancer for a second, Laurie?
Cancer is, like you said, it's a cardinal sign. It's the cardinal water sign. So it is very much, it's the beginning of our emotions. It really brings up our emotional nature. Cancer is very much about protection and care and nurturing. It's sort of funny. People tend to think, and I think it's our culture, particularly this patriarchal culture we're in, kind of doesn't see the strength of water. It was a surprise to me in my early studies to really understand how strong Cancer is. Cancer is somehow thought of as a weaker sign because it's water, it's emotion, it's a feminine sign. And, you really have to understand as a cardinal sign, it is one of the 4 strongest signs in the zodiac. And if thinking of the connection between Cancer and mothering, all you have to do is think of a mother bear protecting its cubs to understand the real strength of Cancer. My firstborn child is a Cancer sun sign, and I think I learned a lot about the strength of Cancer in raising that child. A
Nice.
very, very strong sign.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think those of you, and you'll see this in our symbolism, Cancer is represented by the crab, and it's a perfect symbol for it because it has that protective outer shell and then the soft, nurturing underbelly, like inside. And I think that that's part of the reason that Cancer is so strong, is because it knows its vulnerability and it's worked with its vulnerabilities, and it's the shell helps to protect its vulnerability, but it's also a way of knowing itself, where you can't come in and necessarily attack them on that vulnerability, because they already know it's there and they know how to work with it. And it takes an enormous amount of courage to face one's vulnerability and hold that space. And also, I think probably everybody can take on board, as you said, the mother bear, the idea of the power of a mother's love and bond of a new being, and what that symbolizes. I'm not referring to, I don't know what everyone's childhood was like, let's not worry about that right now, but that core image of the bonding that happens is really what Cancer's about. And so yeah, it's powerful. And I think in nature too, right? I mean, can't you just think of, I think of the Grand Canyon, and the Grand Canyon was formed a little bit by wind, but by water wearing a groove over an enormous amount of time. And there's a relentlessness to water that's easy to kind of not notice. And then it's just so powerful. And it's also so cleansing, which I think is a lot of what we're going to talk about in this Cancer season, is the cleansing, the nourishing, the caretaking that especially this season, really brings into play. So,
and
yeah.
refreshing. Think of cleansing and refreshing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So wherever, looking at your own chart, wherever Cancer is a place where you've got a lot of strength and a lot of big emotions. And that's the area that will have a lot of focus at this time.
Yes, and we'll get more into those individual impacts too, and the other thing to bear in mind is that in everybody's chart, wherever Cancer is, it's linked to your moon, and your moon represents your emotions, it represents your younger self, your vulnerabilities, your view of your mother. So all of those kind of tender things get wrapped in. And so in everybody's chart, this is an extra sensitive area, in all respects. And thinking about looking after that part, caretaking, coming with an attitude of concern and protectiveness, and also willingness to be open to whatever vulnerable thing pops up. Those are some of the themes of what you want to think about with Cancer season. So that's, yeah, it's very yin, looking after yourself. So
okay, so do we want to go looking at week to week through the months period?
yes, yeah. I mean, I think so, because I think we talked about the overall theme, and really it is this Cancerian theme of like, where do you need to slow down and take care of yourself? And there's a lot in this listing that we'll kind of walk you through. There's a lot of places where there's opportunities and really lovely flow of energy to just take care of those more inward places. I mean, for me, up here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in the summer, I just keep thinking about getting out on my paddleboard, getting out on walks near the lakes and the rivers that I live near, and just really embracing water in all of its iterations. So
absolutely. Yeah. It's a good time to get out on the water for sure. Okay. So we're going to break this down week by week, but since the Cancer season starts on a Wednesday, we're going to start on that Wednesday, and we're going to look at this period of time. Oh, this is not quite working the way I want it to. Let me try again.
Yeah, so start with the solstice on June 21st.
Yeah, and we're going to go through the 25th. Is that right?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so those first few days, what do we have going on? We've got, at that time, Mercury is still in Gemini, and we've got obviously the sun moving into Cancer, and then Mercury sextiling Mars on the 21st as well, and then squaring Neptune on the 25th.
Yeah, let's I mean, the 21st, it's a Gemini to Leo sextile, so it's very active. this springs to mind, like being able to engage easily with people, chattiness, like having fun, having a good time, and that being a focal point, even though we're, the sun has just moved into Cancer and this more yin space. But then a few days later, that square to Neptune, it just brings in a much softer focus. Like clarity is not going to be available. So you just want to kind of soften into that, those softer spaces and just be okay with not needing to be clear. That's really all there is to that.
Yeah, that's kind of a simple little space of time. And okay, so are we ready to move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, then there's a lot more going on in this next section of time from the 26th through July 2nd is what we've highlighted here. We've got a lot more going on here.
We sure do. I kind of think of just overall, I've been thinking about this week as it starts out with a pretty good challenge, like something that might be disruptive and intense and like very active and I don't know, just something that could be jarring. And it also finishes with something similar. And then in the middle, when Venus squares Uranus, that can also be very discordant and something unexpected. It was going one way and suddenly, boom, something happens and it's going a different way. So you have those are like the two slices of the bread. And then in the middle bit, there's just a lot of like, settle into flow, settle into water, cool down, calm down, get quiet. Like there's almost like this middle bit that is so much about retreat. And when you add in, not only do you have some trines in water signs, but you also have the moon's going to be in Scorpio for part of that. So it brings in that other water piece. So there's just a lot of water, very strong water energy in that middle. So it's kind of like, woo, maybe something a little rocky, something softer, take care of yourself, and then maybe a little rocky again. What's your thought on that?
Well, I'm just thinking about the Mars squaring Uranus at the beginning there, and then the Venus squaring Uranus at the end. And, those are probably things that we're watching going on in the outer culture, big difficulties and challenge. I mean, we could look, you can read the newspaper any day and that there's a lot of things going on that we can all get upset about, right? And yet during this time, like you said, all of these kind of softer things are like, okay, do what you can, but don't let yourself get crazy. Take care of yourself in the process. On the 26th here, we've got Mercury going into Cancer. So Mercury's joining the sun in Cancer, and it's really asking us to settle our minds into a place of more connection with our emotions, more caring for ourselves and others. And then these trines that you mentioned that create a grand trine with the moon during that period of time, that just brings in such a really beautiful flow of staying in that space of nurturing and caring for the self and others. Don't let yourself get spun out of control. Neptune is really strong here in this period just because it is stationing retrograde. If you've got any planets right at the last few degrees of Pisces, you're probably in a pretty dreamy state anyway. And then we've got that conjunction between Mercury and the sun on July 1st. That is the beginning of a cycle between the sun and Mercury, kind of stating the midpoint between the last retrograde and the next one, right, Jennie?
Yes, it's called the superior conjunction because Mercury is direct, and it's kind of the kickoff for the Mercury retrograde cycle that doesn't happen until the end of August.
Right. So we've got some time, but right now this is just kind of planting a seed in that area. This is really highlighting even further that area where Cancer is in our charts. And then these are lovely little sextiles also on July 1st. That July 1st is a pretty sweet little day because the sun and Mercury conjunct, and then they both sextile Jupiter, just suggesting a real opportunity for expansion and understanding. I love that. That's a sweet little spot. And then we've got that other challenging square the next day that ends
Yeah.
this particular week.
It's so nice that Jupiter's in Taurus right now, because what that does, it just adds some grounding to the whole thing. You're doing all this water and then it's like, oh, there's an island, you know? I mean, it adds it gives it some shape, it gives it some grounding, and makes things a bit more tangible, which is really, really nice. I really like that bit. So
Yes.
it's kind of I think it's the most dynamic week. There's certainly other things going on during this course, but this is sort of the week that really caught my attention.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an interesting one, kind of sandwiched between those difficult aspects to Uranus. And, with both Mars and Venus squaring Uranus, there is a need to pay attention. Don't let it kick you off course, but paying attention to things that are going on in the culture that are shaking things up.
Yeah, and on a personal level, just notice if you're being selfish or like putting yourself in the center of things when you don't need to. Those would be the kind of the Leo part. Just watch for that. That's all. Just pay attention. Aim for fun and generosity. Be prepared for some sudden shifts. But notice if you're getting angry or getting into the more fire aspects, because that's just a sign. So just something to pay attention to.
Yeah,
that's basically it.
Okay, so the next period of time starts with the Capricorn full moon on July 3rd. So, yeah, that's a full moon. We will be making a video about that full moon. So we'll talk about that when the time comes. The rest of the period of that week on July 7th and July 9th, both of those are Mercury making really lovely aspects with outer planets. First, Mercury sextiling Uranus on the 7th is just, Mercury sextiling Uranus just to me is like some ideas waking up in your mind, some excitement. Opening your eyes, opening your attention to something. And then right after that on the 9th, with the trine to Neptune, it's like the idea is some sort of a spiritual awareness. It's, the difference between a sextile and a trine, in my mind, a sextile is an opportunity. We pay attention and we take the opportunity. A trine doesn't even require that. It doesn't really require anything. It's just a free flow of energy. Some understanding comes to you. So watch for that. That's a lovely little aspect.
And I was kind of thinking the full moon week is funny. Like you have that full moon, and there's not a whole lot going on. As you can see, there's just a couple of easier aspects. I sort of think this is a great time to integrate whatever happened the week before. You're kind of having a moment to be like, well, what's the meaning of those two disruptive things or whatever happened? And then what are the results of, if you were able to take retreat time and take advantage of that, nourishing yourself? This Capricorn full moon week, as I'm calling it, between the 3rd there and the 9th, it's just a little bit of time for integration. And sometimes I feel like we forget to talk about that with astrology. You go, oh, this thing happened, and then the next thing happened. It's like, well, something happens, but then you have to figure out how to incorporate it into your life. And so it kind of gives you that week, which I really like, because there's not a whole lot happening that week. So
that would be an awesome week to go on vacation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, take a break.
Starting there with the full moon and then that kind of integration time to just sit on the beach or out in the forest or whatever, just take in the energy, allow your mind to drift into that trine with Neptune and explore with that excitement of Uranus. That would be an awesome week. I wish I had planned a vacation there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, it's in the US is that holiday week, so interesting.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I
So
wasn't
people
even thinking of that. That's right.
The other thing I think that I just want to point out, and then I'll get off that topic, but is because it's a Capricorn full moon, your mind might be a bit preoccupied with some more serious matters, so it kind of gives you a chance to get a little space around that.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. Okay. And then we've got this next period of time. What we're doing is we're starting these periods of time at each quarter moon, in case you hadn't realized that's how we're doing this. So this next period of time starts with the last quarter moon, something along the lines of releasing part of the cycle. And then on the 10th, this is a really interesting day to me. This 10th and 11th, you've got Mars has been moving through Leo, and Mars in Leo is very fiery and very active and can be quite bombastic and loud and assertive. And now it's dropping into the service orientation of Virgo. That's kind of a cooling, that feels good to me. I like seeing that. And then that's followed though by Mercury opposing Pluto, which again, it's going to pull our attention into some big difficulty that's going on around us. And then July 11th, Mercury is entering Leo. Okay, so Mercury, Mars and Mercury Mercury's leaving Leo. I'm sorry. Mars is leaving Leo. Mercury is entering. It's like, as you always talk about it, the passing the baton.
Yeah. Like your turn, Mercury, to do the hot, fiery, yang energy. I'm going to go and chill out and see who needs help.
Right. So the mind is going to get worked up and more fiery and expressive, while the Mars, which is the action taking part, is being a lot more practical and thoughtful as it is taking the actions forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess
I'm sorry. The sun sextiling Uranus on the 14th. That again, that's an opportunity for excitement. I think that's I love that aspect. And then the 17th, we've got Mercury squaring Jupiter. That suggests paying attention to not overindulging, not getting swept up into the newest conspiracy theory or eating too much chocolate cake. I don't know. There's some idea of overexpansion that you might want to pay attention to on that day.
Yeah. And it's funny because, Jupiter's considered the great benefic, and you can kind of follow along whichever train of thought you want. But at its core, what Jupiter does, it makes anything bigger. So I sort of think about, well, with Mercury and Leo, you got to kind of check in, like, what's going on with your ego. If you're in a very egotistical me type of place, well, then Jupiter's probably going to, be like, whoa, it's in Taurus. So you might get a little bit cock blocked, dare I say, in that time frame. On the other hand, if you're in a very playful, generous mode and that's your stance, then Jupiter's going to come in and help give you some grounding to that and be a support, even though it's a square. So especially because Mercury is so malleable. Mercury kind of follows along, and it can follow along with the ego, or it can follow along on a spiritual path. It's up to you how to wield that. So that's how I think of that square, at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a funny week. It's almost like that Mercury opposed Pluto, something may emerge that you can see that you just didn't have insight into before. And the temptation might be to get all embroiled and sucked in and go into the compulsion, obsession part of Pluto. But if you can just not let yourself get pulled into that piece of it, but just use it as an opportunity to see something, it can be extremely powerful, very empowering. So,
it's really worth noting how fast Mercury is moving right now. Up here on June 26th, Mercury entered Cancer, and already here just a few weeks later, Mercury's moving into Leo. And that, when Mercury is moving this quickly, which it is because that conjunction between the sun and Mercury, so that tells us that this is Mercury's moving as fast as it moves, right? Yeah. So when we're in these periods where Mercury is moving so fast, life feels like it's moving really quickly. We can't really get away from that idea of a lot's happening quickly.
Yeah, and then the reiteration of the, hey, it's Cancer, and just in the nick of time, we have the Cancer new moon that kicks off our final few days. It's really basically a full week until the sun goes into Leo. So the reminder of like, oh, okay, things are moving really quickly. Like, whoa, I need to slow down and let me just go put my feet in the river, or something like that. I mean, just those simple things of like, oh, I feel really rushed. Just take some space and you fill that space with something that feels nourishing. And that's the message of Cancer. Um, and then we continue with, you have the Cancer new moon again falling at the end of Cancer season. So we're going to be planting a seed to carry that nourishing forwards into a much more heated season of Leo. So it's a great opportunity in a lot of ways. We'll make a video about that, explain more about that at the time. And then you have the Sun trine Neptune, reiterating those water themes, and that's happening there. And then we finish off with some very interesting configurations. We have, Mars opposed Saturn, Sun opposes Pluto, and then the big news is that Venus retrogrades. So Venus is going to retrograde right at the end of Cancer season. So in a way, this entire business about nourishing yourself, taking care of yourself, it is in preparation for that, because Venus retrograde in Leo is going to be, that is going to be an interesting time. Also going to make a video about that. So we'll go into more of those themes. But interesting, you kind of get this look. You get Mars opposed Saturn, and again, it's the Virgo Pisces. So it's something about putting into action whatever that dream. We talk about Saturn and Pisces. If you want to watch that video, we talk a lot about making the container for the magic to happen. And now in Mars's opposition, you can see a clear path forwards. What steps do you need to take to make that dream become a reality? I mean, that's essentially what that is saying in my mind. And then the final note of the Sun opposed Pluto, same thing, where you're going to see all this intensity happening. You're going to have this view, and you might even have a sense of how to take care of it because of the Cancer. And the idea is just to look and see and to witness and hold space, but not get over embroiled.
Right. Yeah, those oppositions and just the awareness that they bring, and with I think all of the oppositions during this period of time, Mercury to Pluto on the 10th, and then these two on the 20th and 21st, Mars opposed Saturn and Sun opposed Pluto. They really are. They're just, they're all oppositions to, well, I guess, no, they're not all to outer planets, but two of them are to Pluto. But it's just, the awareness, the understanding of what's going on out there and how we can respond as individuals. And that Mars opposed Saturn, like you were saying, Jennie, I really like that. It's like you can see the action that you need to take. This is really an awareness of what action can I take now, connected to that Saturn building the structure for the dream. And yeah, like you said, Jennie, really, if you haven't listened to that video about Saturn moving into Pisces, this is such an important thing. Saturn moving through Pisces, I think, is so crucial for all of us to really understand.
Yes. Yeah. And, just get ready for that Venus retrograde. We're looking forward to unpacking more of what that might involve. So look out for that video.
Yeah, that's and that paying attention to that also, that Venus retrograde is happening at 28 degrees Leo. So if you've got any personal planets near those late degrees of fixed signs, you're going to really feel this slowing down of Venus. Really think about Venus as your values and how your values are need to change at periods of time in our lives. We really need to revisit our values and how we're working with those things. So there's all of that to consider. And I think we're ready to stop sharing that.
Yeah.
And we're going to go on to the individual impacts of this season. Okay, so now we're looking at Cancer season for those of you with Aries rising. So if you've got Aries rising, the focus of the season is in your fourth house of home and family. This is an area where you've got a lot of big emotions around your home and family. And at this period of time, that's where the sun, the warmth, the light of the sun is shining in that area. So make sure you really give a lot of your love and protective energies to that area of your life. And Saturn from the 12th house is really supporting that area. Let me see here. So there's a sextile from Saturn to the sun. Some internal work that you're doing in your unconscious, understanding your own inner patterns is really helping to support your home and family. What do you want to say about all of this, Jennie?
Oh, this is such an interesting connection. I mean, both that 12th and that 4th house are to do with your intuitive awareness as an Aries rising person anyway, your intuitive emotional being, I would say. And it's just, so it kind of elevates this care and nurturing and the things that you give to your family, and also that they bathe you with in return. I mean, there's a spiritual component to it. I mean, there is, it kind of elevates it to this more kind of universal place, where your microcosm links to the bigger picture of how this kind of nurturing and care can almost become like a spiritual practice. I mean, it really is that with this. So it's a really nice support, the way this, I mean, the other thing it can bring in is, your subconscious patterns live in that 12th house. So it also might be that there's some things that come up for you, like families are not the easiest. They're very triggering. So there might be things that come up for you that you need to go, ooh, I need to bring in a little more compassion for myself here so that I can be available to nurture my family. And I mean, the good news with the trine, this is going to be readily available. This is going to be something that you can really tap into as a resource. So that might also be part of the picture. So
yeah, really understanding as well how the family of origin is the ground of that internal patterns, those unconscious patterns of yours. So really, you're learning a lot about yourself and how your family has impacted you during this period of time. It being summer, and the image in the back here is a nice picnic. So, a lot of us you do take vacations during Cancer season and spend more time sometimes with family. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn from your family about your own unconscious work that you need to be doing, and vice versa. So that's where you're at right now, I think.
And just, bearing in mind, there's these other intense things going on during this time. So this supportive trine here, this is the core of where you want to be when these other things are going on, these other intense things. So just keep that in mind as you nurture yourself. This is the beating heart, this nurturing in these areas of your life.
Yeah, if you listen to the first part of this video, there's a lot of things. And we picked up on this Saturn trine because it just is a nice piece to think about and to look at and feel into how you can support yourself during this time. So the support comes from your understanding and work on your own internal patterns. Okay. Ready to move on?
Yeah.
Those of you with, see if I can get it to move. Oh, I know why I won't. Okay, here we go. There you go.
Nice. With Taurus rising, this lovely, flowy, watery trine that Cancer season brings you into is in your 3rd house and your 11th house. So in the 3rd house, you have Cancer, the sun in Cancer moving in there. It kind of brings in this idea that part of how you nourish and take care of yourself and others comes through your communication. So this might be, you needing to sort of say, hey, I need more self-care. Or it also might be that it truly is just very nourishing to get to share your ideas with other people and have good conversations. Those things are absolutely a form of self-care. So that's the first part. with Saturn in there too. So Saturn up in the 11th house with this lovely trine. It's a water trine from community. So this kind of adds in this other layer of your community supporting you and supporting the way that you are able to talk about your vulnerabilities, and offering a nourishing space for you to try out these, methods of communication, or to find people that are willing to have conversations with you about these emotional topics. I mean, this is the kind of exchange you're looking for, and the way that you want to think about taking care of yourself during this Cancer season when there's a lot of other things going on in the world. You want this to be your sort of core of how you get your nourishment through your conversations and through your community.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because, if you listen to the first part of the video, there's a lot of other things we could have talked about, but we really decided we wanted to focus on this because we all, in the middle of this intensity that we're all living through in the summer of 2023, we all need a little support, and Saturn right now during this Cancer season is really offering that support. With the sun there in the 3rd house, there's so much focus on your communication and your day-to-day way you're thinking and how you're speaking and communicating, and leaning on the support of your community to allow you to be there for that vulnerability of using your voice.
Nice.
So there's where you're at, those of you with Taurus rising. And now we're going to move on to those of you who have Gemini rising. If you've got Gemini rising, the light, the warmth of the sun has moved into your 2nd house, which is the area that really speaks of your self-worth, how you really understand what you're worth. The 2nd house, we think of it as the house of money and resources and self-esteem. This is an area where that's very emotionally charged. Wherever Cancer is an area in our lives that's very emotionally charged. So, which suggests a certain amount of vulnerability there. We decided that we really wanted to focus in this video on the trine from the sun because it really brings in such a strong, powerful support to this vulnerable place where Cancer is in our charts. So the support in your case comes from the area of your career, your vocation, maybe your reputation. There's some efforts that you've been putting in the area of your career that is really bringing this support to your emotional vulnerabilities of your self-worth. This could be something like, work that you're doing that is really meaningful to you is really helping support your self-worth. Or it could be as simple as you got a raise at your job and you're making more money. It can really play out in that simple of a way as well. But there's some way that your career, your position out in the greater world is really supporting your self-esteem.
Yeah, I think you've really said that well. I mean, I just can't I can think of a couple of examples in my life of folks with this rising sign and how much their work helps them feel good about themselves, like that their career is really this place of, sure, it's the place where you meet your material needs and you make money and, and those things are very, very important. But for people with Gemini rising, there's this added layer of your emotional needs being met as well in this place of life, and you talked about the vulnerability that the Cancer brings to that 2nd house. But this is just a nice flow of energy. And I mean, I can see how it can also bring in the challenge of, if things aren't going so great in your workplace, that ties in with your self-esteem. I mean, there's a two-way street here too, so you might need to do some work on your self-worth in order to get the better job that you are after. There's a two-way street here. but because it's a trine, it brings in a flow of energy, which is lovely with water. I mean, so this is really how you nourish yourself. So keep working with this during these intense times. This is what you want to keep as your kind of your center, as other things kind of buffet around you on the outside.
Right. Okay, very good. Let's move on then to those of you with Cancer rising.
Oh my. Cancer rising, this is a very important time for you to nourish yourself. This is very, very important that you do whatever it is you need to do, whether it's slow down, whether it's spend more time near water, whether it's, get some stuff off your schedule that is feeling too much. Take charge of your nurturing. And because, honestly, with Cancer rising too, like how you express yourself is, I mean, basically you wear your heart on your sleeve. Your emotions are right there on the forefront. So it's extra care, important for you to take care of that piece. And as you do that, you get the support from Saturn, and the support you're getting, Saturn's in Pisces, it's in your 9th house. And what it's doing is it's really bringing in this other layer of wisdom. Like as you take care of yourself, you are learning how to not only do that for yourself, but to share that wisdom with other people. Your experiences really help nourish other people through your willingness to do the work, to take care of yourself. So there's something about that. And Saturn in that 9th house it brings in a little more structure and a little more seriousness, perhaps about a study you need to undertake in order to enhance your ability to nourish yourself.
Yeah. It's interesting. With Cancer rising, this is such a personal season. The sun moving into your 1st house, really bringing the light and warmth of the sun right directly to, like you said, Cancer ascendant, you wear your heart on your sleeve, and that's where the light and warmth currently is. So you're kind of on display in a way, which can be challenging for someone with Cancer rising, because that place is such a place of vulnerability. How you present yourself in the world can feel very tender and a bit vulnerable. And where the support comes from, there's so many things we could have talked about in this video, but we really chose to look at the Saturn trining the sun as such a beautiful support that will support the entire period of Cancer season. And that support comes, like you said, it comes from that area of your higher world view, your understanding of a bigger picture of the world, whether that be other cultures or religions or travel, education. So, Saturn's only been in there a few months. You've been really doing some work in that area on your worldview. And that work that you've been doing is now able to support and stabilize that vulnerable self-expression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember in the beginning of this, Laurie, we were running through this, you mentioned like might be a time to find a spiritual teacher, a person who can really educate you in some missing piece that you want to work with, that helps you take better care of yourself. So I like you brought that up.
And makes you, kind of strengthens that vulnerable piece. It's so funny. Cancer is such a fascinating sign because it's so vulnerable and yet it's so strong. And that, really understanding that the strength is a part of the vulnerability. If anyone with a strong Cancer component is not willing to show up with that vulnerability, it weakens them. It is in that vulnerability that the strength is. I mean, back to the idea of the mother bear. What is the vulnerability? The vulnerability is that she loves those babies so much she's willing to go to battle. But the vulnerability is love. I mean, that's the vulnerability of Cancer. It's love. And Saturn is here to support that. And with Cancer rising, that vulnerable love has to be worn on your sleeve. So if you've got Cancer rising and you're listening to this, just remember that. Love on the sleeve, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Great.
All right. So next we're going to move to those of you with Leo rising. So if you've got Leo rising, this puts the light and the warmth of the sun has moved into your 12th house. This, it's interesting. The sun moving into the 12th house is shining a light on the area of your life where you're the most internal, the quietest, where nobody else sees it. So, it's a time of developing a deep understanding of your inner patterns, your inner unconscious patterns. And again, that's where Cancer is. Cancer is in your 12th house. You are very vulnerable in that place. You're very exposed in some way in that deep inner place. So where does the support come from? Well, when we talked about the whole month, we talked about a lot of different things, but what we decided to focus on was the trine from Saturn, because Saturn is here during this period of time to just really support the development of the strength of vulnerability. And where we are receiving, if we've got Leo rising, where we are receiving that strength is in the area where we learn how to navigate other people's stuff. Saturn's been moving in your 8th house for just a couple of months. You're learning a lot about how to navigate other people's baggage, how to set and hold healthy boundaries. So it's in the learning of how to hold and set healthy boundaries that is supporting your understanding of your own internal patterns.
Nice. Yeah, this one is interesting to me because Leo rising is like it right away. It's this gregarious outward shell of like, I'm this big personality. But then with Cancer in the 12th house, it just really suggests that one of the vulnerabilities is that there's a struggle around really knowing oneself with Cancer in the 12th house. There's a struggle with your emotions kind of being tucked away, hidden away, like even from yourself. And so there's a necessary sort of excavating of knowing your own emotional layers as a Leo rising person, which could be one of the reasons why, when Leo's really out of balance is often because it's pretty insecure. And it might be insecure because it doesn't know itself. So it brings in that flavor, having Cancer season here, and it highlights that, whatever that is. So for anyone with Leo rising, this is a wonderful opportunity to get to know yourself on an emotional level in a way that you haven't maybe been able to so easily. And yeah, with Saturn as a support, Saturn is the great teacher. So Saturn is teaching you a lot about, just like you said, Laurie, how do you set boundaries that are healthy, that aren't barriers, but also there's some, ability to have healthy separation from other people's values and intensity that might come at you. So there's definitely some big learning around that. And I mean, overall, the 8th and the 12th house, they're two of the houses that really have to do with your kind of intuitive, emotional, possibly even, dare I say, psychic learning, where you're getting information from other places, like those emotional layers, rather than the intellect. So there's a great opportunity here to continue to develop those heightened perceptions that you can get through your emotions. So it's really it's pretty cool. Good time for self-knowledge.
Yeah, I think it is. It is so much about self-knowledge and learning to understand yourself through setting boundaries. I think there's something so big and important in that for you with Leo rising. Okay, so next we're going to move on to those of you with Virgo rising.
I can think of a few folks with this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, one or two. With Virgo rising, Cancer season is happening in your 11th house. So this is going to really bring in the idea of how are you being nourished by your community, who supports you, who sees you, and are you able to receive that love and care and concern from your community? That's going to be the big topic. as a support, we've chosen Saturn to put into these charts because Saturn really is playing a strong support role also in the water sign of Pisces. So we're really working with water stuff here. So flow and refreshment and rejuvenation. And with Virgo rising, there's some way in which an intimate partner in your life or a one-on-one person, could be a business partner too, is really supporting you and helping you expand and receive the nourishing support of your community. So that's really what's coming to play here, is maybe whole new doors have opened to you because of the way somebody is able to support you on a personal level, and that helps you open to the community level. So those are some of the topics.
Yeah, I just love that Saturn support for all of us. That Saturn support during this Cancer season is so beautiful. You think about, wherever the sun is here during Cancer season, because yeah, this is Cancer, we are vulnerable in this area. So if you've got Virgo rising, community is a place of vulnerability, a place where you've got a lot of very deep feelings about how you are supported by your community. It's such an important area to you. And really paying attention, for anyone with Virgo rising, pay attention to the individuals who are here supporting you, and whatever it is that you are presenting, whatever it is you're receiving from community, is currently getting a great deal of support from a partner or partners. So pay attention, and really, Saturn's only been in that 7th house for you. It's only been in there a few months. So you're really doing a certain amount of work and effort and growing understanding in how to deepen those relationships and allowing them to support you. And this is such a beautiful ability for us right now to see how that new work we're doing in this house is supporting us. I love this. This is lovely.
Nice.
Okay.
Great.
So
Okay.
now we're going to move on to those of you with Libra rising. This puts the sun in Cancer into your 10th house. So yeah, wherever the sun moves, it brings light and warmth. So it's bringing that light and that warmth and that shining energy right into your 10th house, which is career, vocation, reputation, how the world sees you, what you bring to the table in that manner. That's where a big focus is for you during this period of time. Wherever Cancer is a place of vulnerability, a place that's really important. Your emotions are very wrapped up in your career. How your career goes really impacts your emotional nature. Now, Saturn, there's a lot of things during Cancer season that we could have pointed to and talked about, but we really decided we wanted to focus on Saturn because this trine from Saturn to the sun is such a beautiful support for bringing strength and determination and support to that area. So for you with Libra rising, there's some way in which you are learning to utilize your day-to-day routines, healthcare routines, dietary routines, something in that realm is really supporting your work out in the world.
Nice. Yeah, it's really interesting thinking about Cancer being up in your 10th house, because as you said, Laurie, it does bring in, a vulnerability around your workplace. But I think what we're trying to get at here is it also means that there are colleagues and an environment in your workplace that can be incredibly nourishing and supportive. You're going to have to help kind of co-create that and know you need that and get that. But at the same time, it's just really, work could be a real sweet spot. It could also, again, bring in that vulnerability, but I think it also can bring a tremendous amount of support. Sometimes we kind of forget that we're these whole beings and our lives all, interweave, like all the areas of our life they're all us, and so we do need nourishing in areas that we might normally sort of conflate with like really practical, you know. And I think this is a great opportunity to really go, oh wow, you know, how does my workplace support me, and how am I being nourished here, and really looking at that. And as you said, yep, Saturn's in the place of practices and routines. You know, I mean, also with Pisces in the sixth house, I mean, what are your dreams like? You know, how do you nurture and nourish your dreams? How do they support you in what you're doing? There's something about enfolding that into your daily routines. And I mean, it could also be like, you know, writing down your dreams or something like that, like really understanding what they are and helping them support you in that nourishing place.
Yeah.
And then yeah, as you said, like folding that into your routines and practices, and making sure you're taking care of yourself on that level.
Something around self-care that you're learning, that you've been learning for the last few months and will continue learning for a few years, is at this moment in time really supporting the light in the area of career.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's lovely. Okay, so let's move on to those of you with Scorpio rising.
Oh, Scorpio. So Scorpio, you have a water sign as your ascendant. So water is something that is a part of your identity. So with that, Cancer season is happening in your ninth house. This is that really rich area of experiences that inform your worldview. You know, this can be your beliefs and your teachers that teach you about, really impart wisdom to you. There's also travel, the idea of going to foreign places and really learning about different emotional ways of being through that. I mean, there's more than one way to do this. And with Cancer in that ninth house, it's very important you nourish yourself with these, I don't know, these wonderful ideas of other places. It could also be, right then it popped into my mind is like, you know, reading a fantasy book, you know, and even though it's a make-believe world, there's a lot of information in there about how to, you know, nurture this more fantastic imaginative part of you. And I do think that's part of the ninth house. And then we chose to incorporate Saturn into this whole picture because Saturn plays such a lovely support role because of its trine. It's in Pisces, it's trining the sun as it goes through Cancer season. So there's a huge support coming to you from your creative place, you know, the place where you give of yourself fully and completely, where you get totally immersed in whatever it is you're doing and you completely give of yourself. So there's a nice support coming in from that creative space. So nourish yourself through your creative activities, follow up on the things that excite you and interest you and help you expand your mind. I mean, that's really how to use this season.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I think about, you know, Saturn's been moving in your fifth house for a few months now. So you've been really learning a lot about your creativity, about how to kind of structure something real in that area of creativity or the giving of yourself. And that is the piece that's really supporting the sun as it is shining its light and bringing warmth to the area of higher learning, higher understanding. You know, this could really play out in some interesting ways of bringing your creativity to the expansion of your mind. Something that you're learning around creativity is really allowing more expansion. I don't know. I keep thinking about traveling and bringing your creative project on the road in some way. I keep thinking, as I'm looking at this, I'm just envisioning a gypsy caravan and people traveling and bringing their expression of self off into the world. It's a really beautiful, it's such a beautiful trine, that Saturn to the sun during this period of time. I think it's really lovely.
Nice.
A lovely piece for us to have right now. So enjoy that, do the work around your creativity and allow it to open up your expansion of your emotions and your understanding of the world. Now, we're going to move on to those of you with Sagittarius rising. This brings the sun in Cancer into your eighth house. Wherever Cancer is a place where there's a lot of feelings. You've got an abundance of feelings around the 8th house, which is the area of our lives where we are navigating deep issues that other people have, that other people bring to the table, that we may struggle to adapt to. So the 8th house is a really deep, intense area. Other people's values, other people's dramas, other people's baggage. It's also shared resources. So this is a very intense area, and it's an area where you've got a lot of strength and a lot of vulnerability. So as there's a focus there, the thing that we really decided we wanted to bring to this conversation was the fact that Saturn is trining that. And Saturn is in the 4th house. This suggests that something that you have been working on while Saturn's been in Pisces just for a few months now, you've been working on something around your home or family, some internal ancestral or family dynamics that are really supporting you in being able to do that deep, intense work of building boundaries for yourself and learning to navigate other people's stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting time. I mean, I think for Sagittarius rising, Cancer season is always going to be about, needing to take care of yourself in the face of the adversity brought by others, like other people's, as you've met, the values and all the, I also think there's a lot of emotional intensity here anyway, of other people usually coming with unresolved baggage and maybe coming to talk to you about it. And then you, Sagittarius rising, have Cancer here, so there could be a real there's a vulnerability, as Laurie, as you said. So you're both very equipped to take on other people as they come to you with their intensity, and also that's contingent on you having some self-awareness about your emotions. So during this Cancer season, this is a really great time to just really make sure that you're taking care of yourself, getting the time out that you need, working with your sensitivity, and choosing, when and how you want to interact with other people. I mean, go ahead and take the time you need to just get nourished, and I think that you might need quite a bit of solitude, but also that you don't have to be totally alone. You can bring those valued family members. That's what Saturn's kind of saying, into that space as well. And that there are people that totally support you and, can give you all the space you need, even when you're in the same room together or hanging out by the same river together or whatever it is. That's kind of what you want to use this season for. So nourish yourself, give yourself full permission to take what space you need in order to do this.
And allow yourself to be supported by those family members that are really available. Okay, so let's move on then to those of you with Capricorn rising.
So Capricorn rising, this whole Cancer season is taking place in your place of relationships. This is your one-on-one partnerships. Again, like we always like to say here, could be a marriage partner, or someone that you just cherish, or it can also be your business partner, and really any one-on-one interaction. So the question you really want to ask yourself here is, what one-on-one interactions really nourish me, and how can I get more of those during Cancer season? Like, which ones are really supportive of me and my emotions? And really take the time to reflect on that, and then fill your cup with those folks that really bring that. This also could be a therapist, because I'm just thinking sometimes those therapy relationships can be so nurturing and so helpful. And meanwhile, we also decided to include Saturn in this chart because Saturn's playing a huge supporting role here. Saturn's in Pisces. It's also a water sign. So you have this nice trine of water signs. And really what that Saturn is doing here is giving you support through your communication. So this is, I don't know, this is kind of almost like the planning, like, hey, you've made your list of all the people that really nourish you. Now you need to just, get in touch with them and say, hey, are you available to hang out on such and such day? Like, let's go and canoe and be on the water. I mean, this is kind of the support of those nuts and bolts, like communications that you need to do in order to make a plan, so that you can really get nourished during the season in preparation for the intensity of the world around you. So that's a really great way to take advantage of the season.
That's lovely. If you've got Capricorn rising, it's really, it's such an interesting thing having Capricorn rising, being so solid and stoic. And yet when you're in partnership, you've got Cancer here. So your one-on-one relationships just open you to this really tender vulnerability. And at this Cancer season, that's where the focus is on those relationships within which you are able to open that more tender part of yourself. And yeah, how you are nurturing that and working with that with this trine to Saturn is so lovely. Saturn's been moving it through your third house for just a few months there. Here, it'll be there for quite a bit longer, a couple of years. But right now, it's been in there for a few months, and you've been really just beginning the work of making serious inroads in your using your voice in a serious way, really learning communication skills. And this is a time when those communication skills, what you're learning in that area, is really supporting the growth and development of these very powerful, tender relationships. This is really a beautiful thing for Capricorn rising. I love that.
Yeah, it is. I think this is a time to kind of take your social intelligence and really be willing to bring your emotions into the forefront of your socializing. That's a nice opportunity.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, so now we're going to move on to those of you with Aquarius rising, and this puts the focus of the sun into the sixth house. Sixth house being the area of day-to-day routines, the routines that we use in our lives to support our lives, to support our health. These are, routines, health, exercise routines, dietary routines, our spiritual routines. Do we sit on a yoga mat and meditate every day, or do we run every day? What are your routines? And if you've got Cancer there, your routines are probably very focused in a tender, nurturing way. Your routines may really involve just nurturing yourself, nurturing others. So this is a time to really pay attention to what those nurturing routines are. And then we wanted to use Saturn here. There's other things we could have talked about, but we decided to use Saturn just because during this season, it offers such a powerful and beautiful support for that sun. So Saturn is in the second house of the area which really speaks to our valuing of ourselves. This suggests, you've been learning for a few months now while Saturn's been in that house. You're really learning more about how to value yourself. And that learning is really supporting your understanding of the importance of your routines. I think it's really as simple as that.
Yeah, I think this is very much like, how do you let your practical habits support your emotional health? I mean, it's just sort of that, you're not just doing, as you mentioned, the routines. You're not just doing the routines because it's good for your body and you need to move your body for that. You're also doing it because it completely keeps you emotionally stable and balanced. And like, that's what you need. And when that kind of spirals out of control, you start having those issues with self-worth, right? Like you start not feeling so good about yourself. And so, to unspiral that, to come out and really select habits and practices and behaviors and ways of thinking about yourself that really support that most tender, emotional, vulnerable part of yourself, is going to just keep you on a really good, even keel. I mean, that's what you're aiming for. And you have a wonderful support right now to do this and to see this in action.
I
So,
love this
yeah,
trine. It's really beautiful.
yeah, it's a
Okay,
good one.
so let's move on to a moment here.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'll get there. We're going to move on now to those of you with Pisces rising.
Oh, Pisces rising. Yeah, I mean, Pisces rising, I just keep thinking about these water signs, having the water sign on the ascendant, and here's Pisces, another one. It just means that part of your personal expression is very emotional. Like your emotions are right there. And it goes both ways. So there's a sensitivity. You might be very sensitive to the world around you, and you may know that about yourself. And also, that this is how you ultimately nourish your sense of self. So for Pisces rising, the Cancer season is happening in your 5th house. So this is a really important time to think about, what are those creative pursuits that just bring you joy? What are those things that just feel so nourishing and so refreshing and so supportive? That's what you're going to want to spend this Cancer season doing. I mean, maybe it's just being outside with your kids, or if you have them, or it's I just always think about the creative expression of certain sports, even like paddleboarding, it's just so calming and refreshing. So those types of things that are just you expressing yourself. And then you have this really great support of Saturn. We've chosen to put Saturn on here because it's in this nice trine with the sun. It's in Pisces, and it's very, very supportive of your nurturing practices during this Cancer season. And so Saturn in your 1st house, you are learning a lot about your self-development. You're learning a lot about just yourself and who you are, and developing more self-awareness about then what to do with that information. So there's this discovery process that's going on, and it has to do with understanding yourself as an emotional being, and like what you need to do to embrace joy through that emotional being.
That's really lovely. Yeah, Saturn's been moving in your 1st house for just a few months now, and something that you are learning about yourself and how you express yourself is really opening this door, opening this flow to that understanding of self and how it can be expressed in the world. And you talked about, playing with your children, and I just want to add playing with other people's children, or, anything that 5th house brings in the idea of playfulness. You can seriously learn about who you are, and yet use that serious knowledge of who you are to show you how to play in a way that will really feed your emotional nature. I say go fly a kite. I'm so into flying kites these days. I think everyone should go fly a kite. It's just, some ways of bringing playfulness into your life during this Cancer season, and yeah, allowing that to flourish.
Nice. Yeah, well, this is a good season to work with those qualities of nurturing. So
I love it. I love that we brought in Saturn. I love that we brought in that stabilizing, that gift that Saturn is bringing to us this month. So
very helpful.
what are you going to learn this season?
Ooh, well, I think I mentioned paddleboarding a whole bunch of times. I can't wait to get out of my paddleboard because I haven't been able to yet. But yeah, definitely being around water, refreshing. I'm definitely planning on canceling a couple appointments that I don't need. So just going to slow down. What about you?
I think that I'm not sure. I think I'll go fly a kite.
By the ocean.
By the ocean. Absolutely. By the ocean. I've been spending so much time on the ocean, and it's just like, oh my goodness, it's just it feeds my soul. Okay.
Lovely.
Well, thank you
All
very
right.
much, Jenny. This has been great, and we will make another video soon, I'm sure.
I thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you, everybody. Bye.